Today we welcome another International Anti-Corruption Day. I think this day, this year, is most special for Sri Lankans because we are at a critical juncture, and with regard to the impact of corruption in Sri Lanka, the impact of corruption on our economy, the impact of corruption on the day-to-day lives of you and me, of citizens, of our quality of lives, of our dreams, ability to reach our dreams. We understood this connection. We understood what corruption can do, that it can bring a country down to its knees. We understood last year with the economic crisis, people made the connection that this crisis was a preventable man-made disaster because of weak governance and corruption, and we had an unprecedented people's uprising. And this assertion has been confirmed by the very recent landmark Supreme Court judgment that has held those high-level decision makers accountable for the economic crisis. In fact, the Supreme Court describes this whole public trust doctrine. It is a sacred duty of each and every public representative, public official that they get when they are elected or appointed to look after the nation, look after and take decisions with regard to public resources on behalf of the people, on behalf of the country. They do not own these resources. People, citizens are the rightful owners of the resources, but these officials and the government, they are trustees, and they take decisions that benefit their interests, but it has to always be in the best interest of the people. If that does not happen, if private interest overrides the public interest, we have a situation of abuse of power, which is, in other words, corruption, and we need accountability for this. We know the devastating impact of economic crisis and that it's prevailing in our country. And towards this, people said last year during the Aragalaya, we want a system change. And then through the IMF's governance diagnostic in Sri Lanka, which is the first in governance diagnostic in Asia, and then we have the very first civil society governance diagnostic report in the world, which we, together with few other civil society organizations, spearheaded with the support of the people. We came up with this diagnostic which identifies the corruption vulnerabilities that are present within the governance structure and where corruption creeps in, and which provides very doable, practical reform recommendations. Now we know what it means to do the system change. We know 1, 2, 3, 4, a clearly laid out plan for immediate, medium, long term. So now there is no excuse for those in governance to delay these reforms. In fact, the IMF in its governance diagnostic very clearly says that if in order to recover the economy, you need to address what caused the economic failure, and you need to address these governance bottlenecks, these governance gaps, these corruption vulnerabilities. That is when we will see the results, because we know that we are getting funding. We are getting funding from the IMF, from the World Bank, from ADB, from bilateral donors. All this money is coming in, but has it translated into actual outcomes for the people? I mean, have our lives improved? Do we see that sometimes the whole gap that we had, where all the funding, the donations that are pouring into the country have been leaking because of corruption, and what goes down to the most needed areas to the people is much less, or it's low quality because of corruption. Now we can't allow this precious money that is now coming in for economic recovery to be lost in because of mismanagement, bad governance and corruption. So in order to achieve this recovery, in order for our young people, for our children to be able to have hope in the future of this country, we have to demand that those in governance implement the governance reforms that are very very clearly demarcated in the governance diagnostic reports, and also we must mention, towards any recovery agenda in any country, it's very important that people fully participate. People need to access information. People need to be able to give their opinion freely without fear, express dissent. But what we have seen in the last couple of months is an opposite kind of environment where people are oppressed, people are scared, people are witch hunted. You know, when they dissent, even the independent commission's judiciary is intimidated by the executive that is overreaching and in controlling even the legislature. And in this situation, in fact, we have gone to the extent of trying to come up with very oppressive pieces of legislation that will take away the fundamental rights of freedom of expression, etc., that we have in our constitution. So this is against any sort of genuine economic recovery, which also needs to happen in an environment of transparency and accountability. So it's also mandatory that while you say that you are committed, the government says that you are committed to reform, that you are committed to good governance, then you must create a conducive environment which protects democratic rights and civic space towards that economic recovery. So as people, let us not rest until we see the system change actually happening.